Okay, so day 5 of 5 of our 5-day plank challenge. We're gonna do a bit of a review, so do some things we already tried on for size this week. It's really good to repeat things when you're learning them, so sort of like once is never. If you do one version of it once and you never do it again, didn't really stick. So repeating things is a big concept when you're learning something, physiologically speaking, but also psychologically speaking. And then we're going to do a couple of alternates to the things we've been doing, a couple of new things. For the day, I think you'll only need a pair of blocks. I'll also have a blanket for my knees. And I'm downstairs in my house just so I can have a little extra room. And I do know there are a couple of us joining in the middle of a workday. So if any of these feel not logistically feasible for your space, you can try them on for size later. But reviewing, come on down to all fours. Let's do the 2 common modifications so that you can catch these and feel how they are useful. So starting on all fours, walk your knees back. I go to this one very frequently when I'm teaching, when I'm practicing. So when your knees are behind your hips, you don't have the advantage of those femur bones just standing like table legs underneath you. You are now outsourcing some of that load bearing and stabilization to your low core. So this is a fantastic version. And as you know, if you tuck your toes under, lift your knees, it's only a few degrees different than having that typical straight legged plank. So let's bring the knees down and bring the knees up. Go ahead and tap the knees to the floor and back to straight. And as we do 3 more, can you keep everything else stabilized so there's no positional change anywhere else in your bod? All right, last one, knees are up, we hold. All right, let's bring the knees on down. So from here, instead of being on your hands, let's come onto our forearms. You have options. You can have palms facing down, palms facing in, palms facing up. Those are all different rotations for your forearms. And then the one that I kind of prefer because it feels held to me, more solid, is lacing my fingers together. Here's my visitor. So as you have your fingers interlaced, sort of like if you were setting up for a headstand. And then as you have this, walk the knees back. We'll combine the 2 alternatives together. So we have knees down and elbows down. And then from here, the straight-legged version. And we'll take a couple of breaths on this one for a moment or two. And as you have this, press into your toes, make those legs super straight. Notice if you're putting your hips up higher, sort of like you're edging towards the downward dog. Notice if you drop your hips quite low, like you're swaying out the low back, and try to bounce right into that middle position. Lift 1 inch higher with the pelvis, come back to center, drop 1 inch lower, and then back to center. Let's do that a couple more times. So you're going up, but like no one would see you doing it. No one would notice it. Whew, back to center or starting, and then an inch lower, like you were just about to drop the belly to the floor. Back to the starting position, 1 inch higher, it's not much. Back to starting position, 1 inch lower. Back to start, higher. Starting position, lower. Starting position. All right, knees come on down. So our 2 modifications, elbows or knees, or both. All right, and then we're gonna hop into a static held high plank position. We're gonna use this, as I kind of been joking, like the master list of all the alignment cues, which in my book are highly debatable. You can always change an element. There is not one right way to do this, but this is sort of my basic setup. So let's hop to it. We're gonna come to our hands and knees. Start by walking the knees back. And we'll inhale, exhale, turn the toes under, lift the legs up straight. Okay, so as you're here, these are actions and positions. So it's not like put a check mark next to it and walk away, but you're gonna press your hands down and you're gonna keep pressing those hands down. Flare your fingers, root down the knuckles. At the base of the fingers, turn your inner elbows to look forward as the same direction as your fingertips. And then look, does one elbow follow that instruction better than the other? And could that slower, stiffer, stickier side make that action of turning the inner elbows forward? From there, as we push the hands down, spread the shoulder blades apart and pull them off the base of the neck. Tuck your chin and push the base of your skull towards the ceiling. Okay, heart comes forward because sometimes those shoulder blades and there's that head positioning makes us hunch the upper back. So chest tips forward, gently turn the tailbone under, simultaneously lift your lowest front ribs from the floor. Push the toes, the legs go straight. Push the toes as though you're about to like bring your crown forward, but hold yourself steady in the middle. All right, let's bring the knees on down. Sit on back, maybe it's a child's pose or some alternate pausing posture. We're gonna do that twice more. All right, go ahead and come forward to an all fours position. Walk the knees back so you're already touching into plank pose. You're already doing more load bearing in the hands. You're already doing more stabilization in the low abdominals. And then we inhale, exhale, legs go straight. Okay, flare the fingers, push the hands. Inner elbows forward. And again, that keeps on happening. Tuck the chin, push the base of your skull towards the ceiling. Widen the shoulder blades, pull the shoulder blades down to middle back. Lift your lowest front ribs off the floor like you were tucking in the front of your shirt. Tuck that tailbone under by a slight nudge. Make the legs really straight, push the toes. Right, and then knees come on down. Stretch on back, whether it's child's pose or just some other interlude where you're not on your hands or arms. Let's do one more. Right, shoulders over wrists, starting off with knees behind hips. Press the hands down, flare the fingers. Last one of that sort of master list of alignment cues and actions. Lift the knees. All right, spread the fingers, drop the roots of the fingers into the floor. Actively turn and keep turning the inner elbows to face forward. Pry the shoulder blades apart, move them down away from the base of the neck. Tuck your chin, push the base of your skull towards the ceiling. Pull the top of your sternum forward. Peek forward with the top chest. Shoulder blades wide, shoulder blades back. Front ribs in, tailbone under, legs mega straight because you push those toes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go ahead and bring the knees on down. Take a breath, take a pause. And then we're going to review a couple of the things we did earlier in the week. The first one will be to take that plank pose with the arms forward of their typical position. Once we get there, we're going to layer on top of it the action of pulling back. I'm just describing this to you so that we each have like a little break for a moment. So it'll be your typical plank. Variable change is instead of having the arms below the shoulders, they're going to be forward. So start from your all fours. And let's place the arms first. So I'm going to walk my hands out without changing much else. And as I'm here for just a moment, if I was setting up all fours, I'd say, oh, no. I want my hands underneath my shoulders. And that's a little bit less muscular. Just, I've got this load bearing going straight down through stacked joints. That's efficient to a certain degree. So when we're trying to get stronger at something, we actually have to do it the inefficient way. And that efficiency builds through that repetition and that skill building, right? So the arms are forward and straight away it's like, that's not where they go. But it's like it's new territory. So press your hands and roll your inner elbows to face forward. Is that made increasingly just difficult as the arms are slightly forward of their typical position, right? Walk the knees back. So again, you're like in a knee down plank and it's already been destabilized, right? So the hands forward of shoulders, knees behind hips, this automatically goes more to the core of your body because those joints aren't efficiently stacked. All right, join me if you can. We're gonna lift those knees off the floor. And as you're here, we get into that concept of isometric engagement. So I don't need you to move. None of your joints are going to change position. However, I want your muscularity to make a decision about how to be here. And what you're gonna do is pull back on the hands. There's nothing to look at. Like if you were seeing me do this, you'd be like, now she's just shaking. But you're pulling the heels of your hands towards the tips of your toes as though you could brusquely sweep your hands backwards across the mat. They won't go because they're holding you up. But could you imagine pulling? All right, and then let's go ahead and take the knees down. Let's try hands back underneath the shoulders. And then variable change here is to widen the hands. And so for me, that means like my thumbs stay mostly on the mat. I'm not a super broad-shouldered person. You might go wider if you're just wider. And then starting off with those knees walking back. All right, and again, if someone was like, hey, set up all fours and I did this, I'd say, oh, this isn't efficient. That's not where I put my hands. But it's only inefficient because I don't usually put my hands here. It's not incorrect, it's just different. Toes tuck under, inhale, exhale, straighten those legs. All right, push your hands down. Now, squeeze inwards. It's like your upper arm bones are gonna knock your elbows together. So you're pulling in, pulling in, pulling in, pulling in. Nothing goes anywhere except a lot of muscle says, I know what you mean, but I can't do it. I can't lift this piano. Oh, squeezing in, and then let's go ahead and come on down. All right, let's begin to combine a few. So you're going to go forward and wide. And then just to give this one its sort of day in the sun, you're gonna turn your hands in. Hands turn in, and by how much? Whatever works for you. And as you have that, instead of having your inner elbows face straight forward, so towards my bookshelf, I'm gonna have it such that my inner elbows almost look at each other. Ugh. That's like the setup for a typical push-up. All right, knees walk back. And again, if I were to stay here for half a second, I would say somewhere in my nervous system, oh, this isn't correct. That's not where I usually put my hands. And that is true, but it's not necessarily incorrect. It's just different. All right, toes tuck, knees lift. All right, so your arms are wide. Imagine pulling them back towards your toes. They go nowhere. Oh, excuse me, your arms are forward, think about pulling them back. Your arms are wide, think about squeezing them in. Now they're turned in, imagine turning them out, and just cycle between that. A pull back, goes nowhere, squeeze in, goes nowhere, turns out. That does happen a little bit for me, but not by anything measurable. Whoa. And then let's go ahead and come on down. Take a pause, take a break. That was a long sequence on the hands. What about back of the hands together, fingertips interlace? Thumbs might touch, the corners of the thumbnails might come close together. This is wrist flexion. We were just in wrist extension. And then what about an active range of motion for wrist extension? So arms in front of you, at least the heels of the hands touching, maybe the forearms and elbows touch. That's not imperative. You can start with the heels of the hands together and bring your palms together. And then active range of motion. How far apart can you pull those palms? Can you get your fingers to point out east and west? And does one do one thing and the other one does something else? Do the fingers flex? Do the hands twist? I always get really nervous when someone's like, will you teach me the one best something exercise for something? And I'm like, it's not like that. But I have answers in my back pocket for when I get asked these really reductionist questions that make me sweat. This is my pat response to, I have wrist issues. What do you recommend? Well, I recommend a lot of things, but one is, what is your active range of motion for wrist extension? All right, let's get to the legs for a moment. So this would be a newish one. I don't know that we did this in this course, but what I'd like you to do is to take a block, probably on its narrowest side, and you're gonna have that in between your knees. And you're gonna walk your knees close together so that just through placement, that block is stuck there. And then also through action, you're gonna squeeze in on it. And we're gonna use these between the thighs, use this between the thighs well, so we come into our plank pose. So to all fours, knees can wiggle and shimmy back. Squeeze in from the get-go. I'm gonna go with regular arms. You can come up with something more creative if you're feeling it. Toes turn under, legs lift, and squeeze the heck out of that block. Like a vice grip. Really, really, really squeeze into it. Squeeze into it so you feel your low abdominals. Squeeze into it so that you feel your pelvic floor. Don't hold your breath or just squeeze the tummy because you've heard those words. Activate the legs, get response out of other body parts. Okay, so you're squeezing in. We've established that. Yes, 'tis true. Now you're going to squeeze in, but imagine also trying to pry the legs apart, like the block was being inflated like a beach ball. And as you have that, you might think, well, which one do you want? Squeeze in or pull apart? We want both. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. I'm trying to get everything around your hips and thighs to work. So squeezing in actively, but then at the same instance, think like, well, could I pull my legs apart? Ah. All right, let's go ahead and bring knees on down. Try that one on for size another time. If it didn't make precise sense to you, it's gonna one day just be like, oh, it's just like every leg and hip muscle and low core. Suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I'm working. Okay, so we did a couple of those wide legs. Let's get to that one. So the opposite of the legs having the block, the legs coming out wide. This one I love. Maybe I've said that already in this course, but this is a good one for me. Don't know about you. So I'm gonna go for regular arms. Knees are behind hips. That's my entry point. Legs come up straight, and then I'm going to step my feet wider than the mat. I don't know what width will work for each one of us, and you can be truly experimental, but again, don't head up to like kind of a downward dog. Make sure you are still in plank. And as you're here with the legs truly widened apart, imagine squeezing them in like you're about to quickly hop the feet right next to each other. But since they don't actually progressively move in towards each other, you're left in that isometric engagement. Inner thighs saying, what do you want me to do here, friend? All right, let's go ahead and bring the knees on down and take a pause. Okay, so a few of those good high plank variations. You don't have to make a lot change to make it very different and then newly strengthening. You just have to change a couple of variables. Let's get back to what we were working on for a little bit yesterday, which will be push-ups. Truly, high to low plank is just a push-up. I know for many people who practice a vinyasa yoga, full confession, I do not, I never have, I've never taught it, but I'm well aware of what it is. You'll see a lot of high to low and then back bend into a downward dog. And it's sort of like distributed quite frequently throughout a vinyasa sequence. And I think for a lot of people, because I get questions about this all the time, like, am I supposed to do this? Are they allowed to do that? What if this happens? And it's such a complex action that I think like stripping off a layer or two of it and just like put it down into a push-up, teach it and practice it that way, see what you learn. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go to this version with 2 tall blocks. If you found yesterday that 2 tall blocks didn't cut it and you needed more height, maybe you've got 2 pairs of blocks. That's probably not everyone, but here I am at my bookshelf. I could certainly grab a couple of books and stack them underneath some blocks. You can always give it a rough draft right now and then refine it later. Okay, so we're gonna start with, well, let's just do a check-in. We're gonna come up with, it doesn't have to be creative a million times, no, right? We should just do a basic one. So I've got the blocks ahead of me. I'm kind of eyeballing, like, are they the width of my shoulders? Pretty much. Flat hands. My fingertips are right behind the blocks. I'm gonna give it a trial run. So firstly, knees walk back, so it's more like a plank. And then from here, I'm going to bend my elbows to the sides, and then straighten my arms. Those blocks were almost too wide. I almost ended up with my nose on the ground. All right, so a quick edit there. And let me try it one more time to make sure I'm content with this. So give it another trial run. When you bend your elbows, we are doing what we yogis call a plank. Everyone else on the planet calls it a tricep push-up, but we give it our own terminology. Can you bend your elbows and tap and stay there and see if you can push your shoulders onto the blocks? Like, imagine lifting your hands. I'm not going to because I don't think it'll work out well for me, but there's sort of a sense here that my shoulders aren't just like, oh, crashing into the blocks, but they're actually pushing. And as you push your shoulders down, press into the heels of the hands, the root knuckles of the fingers, and then straighten those elbows up, henceforth, tricep push-up. Okay, so we're gonna try a few more. You can do all of them from your knees. You might wanna try one with the legs straightened, and if it's a little bit of a crash and burn scenario, at least you know your strength parameter. Doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're working on it. What I would like us to try, whether or not you go for the knee down or the straight leg, is to cross the right leg onto the left. And so if you're gonna do knees down, you might actually lift that right knee off the floor and kind of rest it into the left leg. And if you're going to go with a straight leg position, it's more like you're crossing ankles. But in other words, one way or the other, that right leg is not on the ground. And we're gonna do this. All right, so straight legs. If you're joining me, otherwise knees down, cross right leg over left, bend the elbows, tap the shoulders, straighten the arms. Bend to tap, and straighten. How about 3 for total on this side? Bend the elbows, tap the shoulders, and lift. All right, and that was your third. And uncross to the knees if they've been lifted. Other side, so knees could be back, and you could crisscross that left shin on top of the right calf. If you're going for straight legs, it's more like the ankles are crossing, but one way or the other, your left leg is not on the floor. All right, here we do. Leg straight for me. How about you? I'm going to cross my left ankle on my right one, and then elbows bend to tap the blocks. Up we go. 2, there's just 3. You're halfway done. You're 2/3 of the way done. And then, shoulders tap. Oh, arms lift. Let's go ahead and come on out of that. It's such a tough one. All right, so just another version of those push-ups. I wanted to include that in our repertoire. All right, so let's do the last concept I wanted to cover here. Again, I've got a little bit more room to graze. If you don't worry about it. You can just do little micro movements. You'll be working on the same thing. So it's hard to take, 8 minutes and teach you the lost art of coordination, but I'm gonna try. So what we're gonna do, actually, let's just start from all fours. Let's go beginner basics. It might have been a long time ago, but there was a day when you crawled and someone was very impressed with you. It's probably been a few decades. So let's experience that again. I'm going to start at the back of my mat just to give myself a little runway. And as I start this off, regular all fours. You're going to pick up your right hand and reach it forward, your left knee and reach it forward. And then can you simultaneously land hand and knee? And then you're going to pick up your left hand, right knee, shift forward and land the 2 simultaneously. Okay. So obviously it's opposite hand and leg. And can you pick them up, slide them forward, place them down? Again, it's been decades since anyone was impressed with the fact that you could crawl. You developed this human skill. Most people do, some people skip crawling. If you did skip crawling as a baby, here's your second chance. Now I've gone as far forward as I can, bashing my forehead into the bookshelf. I'm gonna reverse it. It's the same thing, it's just going backwards. So it's opposite hand and knee, picking up, moving back, and setting down. Do a couple more. I don't know what sort of room you've got to roam in. This is one of the classes I wish I could teach it outside. Plenty of room out there. Wi-Fi is no good, and it's always windy or wet. All right, not good for crawling. A couple more wherever you are. I'm just gonna kind of get myself back to my starting point at the back of my mat. All right. So here I am at the back of my mat. Can you join me in a plank? Now, I think there were a couple of us who were selecting to do this mostly on the elbows. I think it's still possible. I haven't really tried it very often. So you might feel more like you're just kind of doing like a little army crawl forward and back. That's fine. You're just gonna locomote from your plank. So if you are going to locomote from a knee down plank, those knees are back. And when that knee comes forward, it doesn't really stay there for very long because you're going to then project yourself way forward. So whenever you have a knee coming down, you're going forward away from it. So you're more plankish rather than being in that all fours where we just were. If you're going to come into a typical straight-legged plank, you're going to bend one knee, lift the opposite hand forward, and then don't land your knee, land your toes. And then as soon as those toes compress, you're then going to come forward to the other side. So the legs stay a little bit bent through this, unless you've got lots of space. I don't. So it's kind of like I think people call it a bear crawl. Boom, and that's as far as I go forward. And so going back. You can, of course, have your knees down with this, but you want to make sure that you're really projecting forward every time you can. And I'm back to my starting position. I'm gonna take a breath and I'll do one more set forward and back. So starting with a typical plank, one knee forward, opposite hand forward. When these toes come down, that's when I press and press and press, and then boop, I gotta go backwards, backwards, oh, backwards, backwards, backwards. There's my starting point, and we'll pause. All right, last start of crawling. So we went forward and back. Let's try going side to side. I'm gonna teach this, it tends to feel kind of like slappy to me, like when I teach it, sometimes like I really hear it. Like people are like, well, bam, hitting the mat as hard as possible. When you land on your hand, make it light, not because I'm worried about the safety of your wrist, maybe you are, but because I think that really kind of says to your core, I need you to coordinate this for me, right? Coordination, we're gonna call it that. So I'm gonna start a little bit off to the side so I can approach you here. Again, knees down would be fine. I'm gonna go up to the straight legs. So I'm gonna go towards the left because that's the space I've got. Left hand out, left leg out, right hand in, don't slap, right leg in. Left hand out, left foot out, right hand in, right foot in. Remember all those isometric squeezing ones we did was for this. Left hand, left foot, right hand, right foot. Left hand, left foot, right hand, right foot. Left foot, left hand, right foot. And then I'm gonna go the other direction. Right hand, right foot, left hand, left foot, right hand, right foot, left hand, left foot, right hand, right foot, left hand, left foot. And then I'm back to my starting position. Take a breath. So that's where we were using those squeezing actions. That's to move us that way. Okay, and then the pièce de résistance for all of this is one that a student of mine decided to call the spinning turtle, because when I taught it initially to her, I had a bolster on my back, and that was just to kind of keep myself honest, so I knew I wasn't really falling from side to side. I didn't bring a bolster down here, so I'm just gonna skip that, but you're gonna take your pose and dial it like a clock. So it'll be very similar to what we were just doing, but we're gonna turn, and let me narrate it as we go along. I'm gonna take in one more long breath here and let's go ahead and get to it. I mostly cleared the field. You might see me stumble into a couple of objects that are just off camera. You'll never know exactly how messy this room is. So I'm gonna start with my all fours and then knees back. Knees could stay down, friends. I'm gonna try it with my legs straight. So both legs up. And then from here, it's left hand going out towards the left, right foot going out towards the right. So you just got wide and diagonal. And then that right hand comes in and left foot goes towards the right. Feel that? So it's on diagonals. It's left hand out, right foot out, right hand in, left foot in. We'll keep going. Left hand, right foot, right hand, left foot. Left hand, right foot, left foot, right hand. Left hand, right foot, right hand, left foot. Left hand, right foot, right hand, left foot. And I'm kind of where I'm facing backwards from where I started. So let's take a pause. I'm gonna take a pause. You can do what you want. And I'll complete the circle, but I'm gonna go the other way, just so I can kind of lead from the opposite direction. So a long inhale and exhale. All right, this is our pièce de résistance. This is like all your training is coming into play here. Strength, coordination. If you want the killer version, I shall not be teaching this today. Every time you get back to a plank position, you do a push-up. But you know what? I think I'll leave that for another day. So I'm gonna start myself off. Knees move back, toes turn under, legs lift, and I'm gonna go leading with my right hand. So legs up. All right, right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot, right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot, right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot, right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot. Oh, almost there. Right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot. Oh, and back where I started. All right, so you can obviously do like a full circumnavigation of the globe if you want to with that. Again, if you are wondering, well, that's too easy, what else can you give me? Then you do a plank in between each one, but not too many people have been requesting that I make this much harder. Hope that's been feeling good for you.